Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
And we'd like to welcome everybody to the Football's Family Podcast. And the time that this will come out, it will be New Year's Eve, which is around the time that the big bowl games are going to be on. And it just so happens to be the perfect time to have this guest on today to talk about one of them. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. My name is Dana Augusta. I am the host of the Historically Speaking Sports podcast right here on the Sports History Network. And I'm very happy and privileged to be on board with you, sir, and been looking forward to it.
Dana and I go way back when I started, I think it was just early on for me, and for you, I think we got in contact through Twitter.
Yeah.
And we got on and I'm blessed to know that you are my friend, but I'm also blessed to know that I had a little bit of influence in getting you on this, and I'm so happy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I call you the mentor.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. If I'm your mentor, though, we're going to go down the wrong road together. No, I do appreciate that, my friend. You had, and you still do. Your podcast has gotten better every time I've listened to it. You have a way about you. You have cadence. You have a good voice, and it works out that people can feel you as a person through your podcast. It's not just robotic, and I do appreciate that. Today, what I want to do is you messaged me about your grandfather and something about the Rose Bowl, and I just want you to talk because, again, my podcast here is just about the fan. It's
Right.
not about the history. There's history involved, obviously.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But I want to know about the fan. So can you talk a little bit about what we were talking about?
Okay, well, let me give you a little Cliff Notes version, give you a little backstory. My grandfather, where I come from a small town in South Louisiana, New Iberia, Louisiana, which is right on the coast. And my grandfather is a very, very historical figure, I guess you could say, in my neck of the woods, I should say, because my grandfather was the first African-American principal of a public school after the schools integrated in the late 60s.
All right, well, let's stop right there.
Okay.
He's a hero because he
Yes.
probably had to endure a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, he did. He told me stories.
Well,
You know,
that to me, and we don't have to go into detail because it probably is not a good thing to rehash, but
right.
the very fact that he did what he did, and how long did he do it?
Well, he was principal for that one particular school for 6 years, right before he retired. He retired in the mid to late 70s, but he was a school teacher and principal and everything for about 30 years. And that was the crowning achievement of his career, is being the first African American principal of a public school. And in the school that he was the principal of, they had since changed the name and they had moved it. Actually, it's no longer a school anymore, but the school that replaced it has a shrine dedicated to him. He pretty much helped build the school.
As they should. Okay, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. But go ahead, keep going.
But he was the real sports fan of my household. He's the one who gave me the passion for sports, was him. And we talked about the Rose Bowl. And when it comes down to New Year's Day in the Augusta household, say in the 1980s when I grew up, it was a ritual that took place. And the ritual was simply this. Me and my grandfather would sit around and watch. The first game was always the Cotton Bowl. And we'll sit down there and watch the Cotton Bowl, and then followed by the Rose Bowl. And then that was followed by whichever game was the better game, because there was always the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl on at the same time.
Yeah.
So we pretty much had to decide, okay, which bowl game that we're going to watch. Before all of this could happen, though, Jeremy, there was one stipulation that had to be done. And that was, that morning, My grandmother had to watch, my grandmother and mom had to watch the Tournament of Roses parade. If we did not surrender the television to them to watch the Tournament of Roses parade, there would be, let's just say we would not be able to watch the games in peace. Let's just say that. My dad wasn't really that, my dad's a Raiders fan, but that's all he's a fan of. He's not really a college football fan per se. He'll watch it like in self-defense. But my grandfather and I were the ones who watched the games religiously, and he was the real sports fan of my household. And that was how he and I bonded every New Year's. Now I could tell you some stories about, the main reason why I contacted you to talk about this, because you said something in another podcast that just brought me to this, and I'm gonna share that with you in a minute.
Okay, stop right there, Dana, because you're talking about in South Louisiana, it's closer to Texas than it is to Pasadena.
Yes.
So the Cotton Bowl I get, because you're a Southern guy like I am. I get the Cotton Bowl. The Cotton Bowl is respected. It's respected because I think it was John Eisenberg wrote a book about that. I can't remember exactly. The Cotton Bowl Days is the name of it. And fantastic book. And I might have got his last name wrong, and I apologize. But it's a respected game, and Tennessee would go over there often. Texas would play there often. I remember watching that. But why the Rose Bowl?
Well, let's just say this: it's the granddaddy of them all. It was like to us and to him mostly, it was the most important game, And yeah, we grew up in South Louisiana, but there was just something special about the Rose Bowl, because New Year's Day in South Louisiana typically is cold, it's rainy, it's overcast. There's nothing much going on outside. But you turn on the Rose Bowl and you see that dark green field, that the floor of the Rose Bowl, and you see the palm trees in the background and the bright blue skies, and it was just something that was just immediately drawn to that we were drawn to, especially him, and it was like we had to watch because it was tradition with him. He would listen to the Rose Bowl when he was a kid in high school and in college in the 30s. He would listen to the Rose Bowl on the radio, and then later on he told me that he attended one Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, and it was like a tradition with him for the Rose Bowl and all the bowl games, because he was a big sports fan growing up. At least for me, as a kid watching him, and he passed on that passion for sports. He passed it on to me. He has two sons. One became a high school football coach who recently passed away, unfortunately, my uncle. And my dad, who played sports in high school, but he was more interested in other things other than sports, like, woodworking and that sort of thing. That floated his boat. For me and my grandfather, it was really sports.
So what did this year has been kind of weird for me. What did I say that brought this up to you?
Well, what was going on was that I was listening to in preparation of the in memoriam thing that we do with the Newman brothers. I was listening to something that you said, and you were talking about Vin Scully, and you were talking about the game 1 1988 World Series, and it immediately flashed back to my grandfather, because again, my grandfather was a big sports fan, and the night that Kirk Gibson hit the home run, I'll never forget. I was 15 years old.
Wasn't that an
I was
awesome
15 years old, right? And my grandfather was a die-hard Dodgers fan, okay? And if you could imagine my grandpa, first of all, physically, the best way you could describe my grandfather was that if you took a picture of Barack Obama and you gave him black horn rim those black horn rim glasses from like the 60s and a thin mustache, that's my grandpa. And he was a diehard Dodgers fan. And I remember me and my buddies had went out that night, and I came back home, and it was all set up. Dennis Eckersley was on the mound, and I saw the score, and I saw who was on the mound. I said, "This is over. It's over." So I'm gonna sit here and watch my grandfather basically curse out the television. And he started in preparation because they brought up Kirk Gibson to bat, and he followed the Dodgers, and he was like, "Why are they bringing this crippled clown in here to bat? He can't even walk to the plate, much less swing a bat." And I'm sitting there just cracking up, laughing and stuff like that. I had no dog in the fight, I mean, I'm just watching, right? Next thing you know, Kirk Gibson hits the home run. My grandfather let out the greatest, most blissful scream that you could ever imagine. And he was like jumping up and running around the house and hooping and hollering and stuff like that. Now, gotta remember, this guy's like in his early 70s when he's doing this, right? And he's jumping around the house like he's 12. And I'm sitting here and on the sofa looking at him and looking at the TV in just total disbelief. But he was just in awe and just in total amazement of what happened. And to him, that was like one of the greatest. To him, he said that was like the second greatest sports moment he has ever witnessed. And I'm dying. And the greatest one was he attended the very first New Orleans Saints football game.
Did he really?
And that was the game when John Gilliam returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown in the opening game of the Saints when they played at Tulane Stadium. My grandfather was there. And he said that was the greatest sports moment he had ever witnessed.
Now, what is your grandfather's name?
Edrin. Edran. Edrin.
Edrin. Mr. Edrin.
Edrin Auguster.
Edrin Auguster. Mr. Edrin had several, obviously he was into kids and their education. He loved you and the family, obviously. But Mr. Edrin also was what we aspire to be one day, just into something to the point where that makes you happy. But my guess is that it didn't devastate him when they lost. It wasn't like the end of the world type thing.
Well, I'm going to say this. I watched a lot of Sundays with him watching the Saints.
Okay, but that let's just go back and say that time was not good for the Saints. That time was
I watched plenty of Sundays with him. One Sunday that comes to mind was my grandfather was on the deacon board of his church, okay? And the one moment, the first time I ever heard my grandfather really curse was the famous Big Ben play between the Falcons and the Saints in the Superdome. Steve Barkowski throws up a Hail Mary at the last second, and the Saints and the Falcons catch it off of a deflection and still runs like 20 yards and to get into the end zone to beat the Saints in the Superdome. This was like 1978, 79, somewhere in there. My grandfather rolled off a string of curse words I didn't think he even knew, but it was like, I was just sitting there like in awe, like, my grandfather know those words? I mean, come on. Right. And it was, and that just spoke to really the true sports fan that he was. The only wish that I had was that if he was alive to see the Saints win the Super Bowl. And I tell this to people all the time, when Tracy Porter makes that interception against Peyton Manning and runs the pick six back, I was screaming like my grandfather. I'm not a Saints fan. I'm a Chargers fan. Yeah, but I was rooting for the Saints because, hey, it's the Saints, and I never thought I would actually see this happen in my lifetime. But when Tracy Porter was running, I just felt like I was channeling my grandfather cheering, because I know he would have been acting a fool. I know he was.
All right. So let me rephrase what I said. He kept things in perspective. How about that?
Yes, he did. He really did keep things in perspective.
You can enjoy the game, but in life, it's not all about that.
Yeah. He kept things in perspective. He was very mild-mannered. He was one of those people that can give you a compliment, and it'd be such of a biting compliment or such of a backhand compliment that you really thought that he was complimenting you when actually he was talking bad about you. And that's just the type of person that he was. He was very no nonsense. The best way to describe his personality is I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman playing Principal Joe Clark, but that's one of Morgan Freeman's early movies when he played the principal of this very tough New Jersey high school. Well, my grandfather was a lot like that. Very in business, no nonsense, straight down to brass tacks. This is who I am. This is what we're doing. And he was just a very straight up, but also very wise, very loving, very full of care. And he was basically my best friend until I started school because I went with him everywhere. He and I were very, very close, even up to the day he passed. He and I were very, very close.
So your idea of, is it New Year's Day? I have not kept up with. I do know New Year's Day. Sometime about 1 or 2, I need to be at my parents' house to watch the Alabama game.
Yeah, it's at 5 o'clock.
It's at 5 o'clock, and I know
4 o'clock. You're at 5 o'clock our time, 4 o'clock over there where you are.
And that's where you're going to be, right? You're going to have.
Of course. I got to keep and my son has joined me in the tradition of watching the Rose Bowl.
That I respect that, Dana. You know my situation.
Yes, sir.
Don't ever take that for granted, my friend. I know you don't.
Oh, of course not.
Of
course not. I mean, even though my son has gone through some things himself, dealing with autism and dealing with ADHD, and he's on the autism spectrum and stuff like that. And he has, and the thing about it is that he's my hero because he played football for one of the best football programs in the state of Georgia and hung out for all 4 years and was varsity all 4 years that he was there. And he did all of that dealing with autism, and also was a honor student. Was an honor roll, made the honor roll, never got in trouble. And now he's working with the football team as an assistant trainer for a paid internship. Now, if that's not my hero, I don't know what is.
I respect that, buddy. That's very respectful, and let him know that the guy that he doesn't know respects the heck out of what he is doing. Please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to be a trainer. He wants to be an athletic trainer.
Well, we have and I hope he does. I hope he really gets to do that. I told you about the Zoom and about time frame. We're going to get to a point where the Zoom's going to pop up. I do, because what you just told me is exactly what football's family is about. Your grandfather, your son, and you. That's what it is. That's 100%. But I am not as versed in college as I am in pro. I'm just not. I grew up a Vanderbilt Commodore fan, so I wasn't really a football fan, apparently. And it wasn't until 2 of my kids were born in Tuscaloosa that I kind of went that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to say, hey, what do you know about college football? It's like, as soon as NCAA football comes back out, I will know more. And they need to hurry up and come out with that. Golly. Anyway, what is going on with the Pac-12?
Well, I just kind of wish that the powers that be, they set up the playoff system, would have had Washington play in the Rose Bowl one last time, because the Pac-12 has always been connected with the Rose Bowl for even back before it was even the Pac-8. It was like back when it was I think it was the Athletic Association of the Pacific Schools or something like that, some long drawn out word soup of a name. But the Pac-12, I've always been a fan of. I'm a UCLA fan, but I have mad respect for USC. The only school I really don't care for in college football, that I really have a somewhat of a semi-hatred for, is Notre Dame. Okay. And I just don't like Notre Dame, just never did. But UCLA, USC, Oregon State, all those Pac-12 schools. And unfortunately, it's the demise of the Pac-12, which is sad for me because, again, my grandfather and I was introduced to college football watching USC versus UCLA. I was introduced to that. LSU at the time was not good. You're talking about mid-'80s. LSU had some okay teams, and they would make a bowl game here and there, but they wasn't like what LSU is now. They just weren't. But when it came down to the USC was good, UCLA was good. When I started watching them and following them, when they had Rick Neuheisel as the quarterback, not the coach, but Rick Neuheisel was a quarterback there. That's when I started following them. And plus, they got the coolest colors in college football. Let's just be honest. Best uniforms in college football.
Okay, this is coming from a Chargers fan, folks. So
yes, of course. Powder blue and gold, baby.
It's very similar.
And I don't know if I told you this or not, but powder blue and gold is also my wedding colors.
Oh golly, you're gonna have to show me pictures, dude.
They're also my wedding colors.
You send me a picture as soon as you can. I gotta see this. Because
I was wearing a white tux, and all my groomsmen were wearing gray with blue ties. And the bridesmaids were wearing gold.
Oh gosh, I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find a picture and send it to you. But I'm gonna also send you a picture of my grandpa too.
Yeah, please do. So I have a problem. I'm a traditionalist like you are. Maybe not the same level, because again, I'm telling you, I'm not a college guy. I've studied a lot on I believe one of the first big games that Alabama had was in the Rose Bowl.
And 1924. I want to say they played Washington.
Yes, they did, and it was broadcast back in Tuscaloosa, and it took a long time to get back there. It really did.
Yes,
they rode on a train for several days to get there. I remember some years, Dana, that the four TV, the two TV channel, ABC, NBC, CBS,
right?
They all had games going on at one time, and I remember going back and forth. Now I don't have regular TV, so I have to go to another city to get to watch something. I remember, and what you're saying, you have to pick. Sometimes you just have to pick a game. But I remember the Rose Bowl is always the Big Ten and the Pac-12.
Yep.
Always that. But one year, and I might be off on this, so you need to correct me because I know you'll know it. It was the BCS title game against USC in Texas.
USC in Texas. That was 06.
It was 06, because I know you know where I'm going with this, being a Titans fan. You know where I'm going with this.
Vince Young,
yes, sir. I went to sleep. I slept through that last drive.
Really?
Yeah, it just tells you I'm old. That's how it is. And I woke up, I kid you not, Dana, I woke up the next day and I saw video of Texas winning. I thought, what in the world? Of course, the internet wasn't that big. It was dial up. But within a couple of days, they replayed the game. So I watched it and I was like, dadgum, Vince Young doing what he did at the right moment, got him drafted.
Right.
And Matt Leinart really took his career down. Reggie Bush was just insane, period.
Yeah.
But it was always, like Michigan or Ohio State going to Pasadena, and it was viewed as a very important game. Do you think it has diminished because of the playoffs?
I mean, it's funny that you asked that, because I was talking with somebody about this very similar thing a couple days ago, that I don't think that the playoffs have diminished it. I just think that what you had back then, everything is subject to change eventually. I think that with the way that college football is now, with the now expanding to 12 teams instead of the 4, there was so much more drama in college football back then because of who would be voted national champ, not who was going to win 1 versus 2 or who was going to win the national championship game. Back then, during my time and during the years that I watched it when I was a kid, it was always who would be voted number 1. You rarely had a 1 versus 2 matchup in a bowl game. And I think that there was some built-in drama behind that back then. Now the drama is, okay, which 4 teams is going to be in the Final Four for the BCS or whatever it is. And there was a lot of excitement just in that. The bowl games are still going to be the bowl games, but I think that it has diminished because of the prestige of it and the importance of it. Because the Rose Bowl was Pac-10 versus Big 12. Pac-10 versus Big 10. Orange Bowl was Big 8 against an at-large. The Cotton Bowl was the Southwest Conference against another at-large, or most likely Notre Dame. Sugar Bowl was SEC versus ACC or something like that, or Big Ten, or something like that. But the SEC team was always in the Sugar Bowl. A Big 12 or Big 8 team was always in the Orange Bowl, and the Southwest Conference, which was all of the Texas schools plus Arkansas, was in the Cotton Bowl. And that's the way it was back then. And I think that it kind of diminished because there's not that quote unquote what they call the mythical national champion. They don't have that anymore. So that, I think that was a little bit of, a little bit of drama in those games, and there's no drama now. And of course, when you had that drama take place after the game, because right now I'm working on one of the things right now is like this year, in fact, on the 2nd, it's the 40th anniversary of the Orange Bowl between Miami and Nebraska, the famous "should he go for two" championship game when Tom Osborne went for two to win it instead of settling on a tie, which he would have been awarded a national championship, even though he would have tied Miami. That was 40 years ago. That awesome game with Bernie Kosar and Brian Blades and Alonzo Highsmith for Miami. Turner Gill was a quarterback from Nebraska. And I could go on and on about that game because that was like one of the first college football games I remember watching where it was like, this was a really, really good game, and I was like, 11 years old watching that game.
I see. I absolutely love that because I remember Bernie Kosar as a Brown, but I don't remember the lead up. So I've watched a lot of stuff with him leading up to it. That's amazing. And like I said, it's getting to a point where I'm gonna cut it off here, but I want to keep talking as long as we can.
Right.
I don't know if I like the super conferences, Dana. I don't know if I like that.
It's like they gotta do something. And I think that UCLA's coach Chip Kelly had a brilliant idea. I'm not sure it would do that because of course there's money involved. Money is the great equalizer. But one of the things that Chip Kelly they should do is make two super conferences, kind of like have it the way that is done in Premier Soccer in England, where you have a top tier, which would be like all of the big time money making schools, and set that up like an AFC NFC type thing, where you have one conference, like you have like the Western schools, and you all play like say for example UCLA would play all the Western schools. Okay, and every now and then you throw in like 4 games against teams in the East, and just do this just strictly for football. Basketball, baseball, softball, all the other sports will go back to the regular Pac-12, Big Ten, the way it is now. Okay, and football would be just totally separate. Okay, and just do that. And then like smaller schools, like for example, Tulane and Louisiana Tech and, maybe Vanderbilt or something like that, the smaller schools that doesn't make as much money, but are still considered major schools, they play for their own national title. And the two teams that had like 2 or 3 teams that had great records from that lower division go up to that top tier. And schools that were struggling in this top team that top tier go down to the other tier with the smaller schools, and do that like every 2 years or so, just switch them up, depending upon record. And I thought that was a pretty interesting idea. But the super conferences, to me, I'm just waiting to see how they fix this. I'm not going to pass judgment yet. Just let me see how it all looks.
I saw somewhere today that for Florida State to leave, and I might be wrong on this, but I saw on the internet, so it has to be 100% right if it's on the internet, that it cost them $120 million to leave the ACC.
Yes. They have some kind of an agreement. I forgot the name of it offhand, but it was an agreement that they signed when they joined the ACC, I think like 12 or so years ago. And they have to stay part of the ACC to like the 2030s, but the reason why they want to leave is because they're not making their top tier school, but they're linked to the ACC, and the ACC is not as prestigious in football as they are in basketball. ACC is a basketball conference, far and wide. You know, the last time you had Clemson, and then that's it. Basically, they put all their eggs in football. You know, Miami has gone down.
Yeah.
Florida State is really good, but they just was unlucky, especially today.
Did they lose today?
By Georgia.
Oh, well, that's Georgia. Georgia had I hate to say this, a bone to pick with everybody. That's all.
And I really thought there was going to be somewhat the opposite, because I thought that Florida State was going to come in there inspired because they wanted to show everybody they indeed deserve to be in the Final Four. And the way it turned out, not so fast.
I'll tell you this, coming from an Alabama fan, I'm looking up the game right now. Florida State deserved to be in there. The only thing that would be different. Good gracious. 63-3.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I stopped watching it at halftime, to be honest.
What? Oh, they put up 35 points in the second quarter. Good gracious. What did Florida State think? The only reason I believe they didn't make it to the playoffs was because of the ACC SEC thing.
Yes. And, you know, they wanted the Leicester thing where, you know, they lost their starting quarterback in one of the worst injuries I've seen on this side of Joe Theismann. It was bad. It was a gruesome injury for that young man to suffer. And he was a senior also to boot. So that was tragic. That was very unfortunate. But I think that with Florida State in their situation, you know, I really do believe that I don't think that they were good enough because they played the ACC, and the ACC schools aren't up to snuff as, say, the Pac-12, which really showed out this year. They really did, in their swan song, so to speak. Well, Texas went to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. That was impressive. Michigan is Michigan. And I'm rooting for Michigan because I'm hoping beyond hope that Harbaugh leaves and become the Chargers' new head coach. yes. I am. Yes.
And the truth,
guilty as charged. That's what I'm rooting for.
The truth comes out at Football's Family. Here's the problem I find with this is it was 100% politics. Texas deserves to be in it, but guess what Texas is going to be next year?
SEC.
Alabama won the SEC against a team that hadn't lost in 3 years.
Yes.
And we see today just how good they are.
Right.
Does that mean that they deserve to jump everybody, even Georgia? Does that mean they deserve to jump a Georgia or a Florida to move into the number 4 position? Michigan, to me, is a clear number 1.
Yeah.
And Washington, to me, were they 3rd or 2nd?
Washington 2nd.
They're going to play Alabama. I'm sorry, Washington. It's not going to be good for you.
No. Pac-12, as much as I love the Pac-12 schools do not have, they got the speed. Pac-12 is known for speed, but they just don't have the strength.
Alabama is, here it goes, another one of those phrases. I'm so sorry about this. Alabama's going to roll. Sorry, I said that out loud.
I think Michigan's going to win it all, despite my obvious despite my obvious rooting, but I think Michigan is due. I think as a school, Michigan is due.
I think if I were to put it on any other team, of course, I'm not a college guy, but I believe Michigan will probably win the whole thing because their team, I did watch several other games against Ohio State even. Their team has just rounded out. Alabama has looked rough this year in certain situations. That Auburn game was not as close as the score indicated. I think Auburn played better. They just that last play.
Auburn should have won, probably, in my opinion.
Auburn should have won. Texas is definitely a better team than Alabama. And Washington, I don't know. It's like if you're comparing apples to oranges, I don't know. Washington had a great season, but are they SEC or Texas or Big Ten level? I don't know.
But we shall see. We shall see in the next couple of days.
Let me close this up here, my friend. And like I said, this episode will be aired on the 31st, which is just 4 hours away. It will be aired pretty early in the morning. And it kind of gives you kind of indication about how great Dana is, about his family, and about what he likes. Who's playing in the Rose Bowl this year?
The Rose Bowl is the Alabama, Texas. Is it Alabama? Is Alabama and is it Michigan? Yeah, Michigan, Alabama, Michigan, and Washington plays Texas in the Sugar. So it's Alabama, Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
Alabama, Michigan in your Rose Bowl. And
I should know that. I've been seeing it. I've been seeing advertisements for us all day long.
and I know where you're going to be. So when you sit down to watch it, just message me. I'm going to message you on Slack in a little bit and give you my phone number.
Okay.
We'll go back and forth, my friend.
All right.
If you see a weird number pop up from the area code of Middle Tennessee, it's just me. It's just a weird person. It's not a weird number. It's just a weird person.
So yeah, you and I are in the same boat. You know that.
Oh, I know that. Hey, we're very similar. We're very similar. We probably have very similar haircuts too. Yep, we do. We do. That comes from having kids, folks.
Yes.
Kids.
Yes.
I am proud to call you my friend and my brother. You are a good man, and I enjoy talking with you. And everybody listen to his podcast. Do you want to throw it out, your podcast and your Twitter handle and everything?
Once again, my podcast is Historically Speaking Sports. My Twitter handle is Historically SP2, whether it's Twitter or X, it's the same thing. I don't know what you even call it now.
It's Twitter.
But yeah, Historically Speaking Sports. I have an episode that's coming out like next week sometime, talking about the 1984 Orange Bowl between Nebraska and Miami. Also, the historic losing streak of the Detroit Pistons, which, believe it or not, ended tonight. They beat Toronto. So it ended at 28 consecutive losses. We got talking about that. I'm also going to talk about the senior inductees to the Pro Football Hall of Fame that's coming up. So we got is jam-packed this upcoming episode that's coming out this upcoming week.
And I enjoy every moment of it. Thank you, Dana. Like I said, I'm about to have to get out before it kicks me out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Happy New Year, my friend. And
Happy New Year to you and your family, man. And much love to you. And thanks for the kind words.
Oh, anytime. And guys who are listening, my audience here, our audience, thank you and have a great New Year's. And we'll see you back in 2024.
Right on.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.